representative of the Sudan for their statement. My apologies. I thank Ambassador Opong Ntiri for her briefing. I now give the floor to the representative of the Sudan.
شكرا سيد الرئيسة. أود أن أتقدم لكم بالتهنئة الحارة على رئاستكم لمجلس الأمن خلال شهر ديسمبر الحالي، ونحن على ثقة أنكم ستديرون أعمال المجلس بحنكة واقتدار، ونعرب عن تقديرنا للجهود التي بذلتها غانا خلال رئاستها للمجلس الشهر الماضي. في تقرير الأمين العام الصادر بتاريخ 31 يوليو 2021 بعنوان استعراض الحالة في دارفور والمؤشرات المرجعية لتقييم التدابير المتعلقة بدارفور، ورد التالي: خلال الفترة ما بين 26 يونيو حزيران 21 قام فريق تقييم من الأمان العامة بزيارة السودان، وشملت زيارته مدن الخرطوم ونيالا والفاشر وولايات شمال وجنوب دارفور، إضافة إلى مخيمات النازحين بالتحديد كاس وكلمة وأبو شوك، والتقى بعد مشاوراته مع الحكومة الانتقالية والأطراف الموقعة على سلام جوبا والأحزاب السياسية والمجتمع المدني والمجموعات النسائية والشبابية، بجانب التشاور مع فرق التقييم والخبراء المعنية بالسودان وأفريقيا الوسطى وليبيا وجنوب السودان، وتوصل إلى الحقائق التالية: تحسن الأوضاع في دارفور منذ يوليو 2004 نتيجة لثورة ديسمبر المجيدة في 2018، والتطورات الإيجابية مثل الاتفاق السياسي على مؤسسات وهياكل الحكم في الفترة الانتقالية والإعلان الدستوري الموقع في 2019 بين قوى الحرية والتغيير والمجلس العسكري الانتقالي، إضافة إلى اعتماد خطة العمل الوطنية لحماية المدنيين في مايو 2020 والتوقيع على اتفاق جوبا للسلام في أكتوبر 2020، والذي اعتبره فريق التقييم الأممي أفضل فرصة لتحقيق سلام شامل ومستدام للتوقف الدائم لإطلاق النار، إضافة إلى بروتوكولات تقاسم السلطة والتعددية والترتيبات الأمنية ومعالجة الأسباب الجوهرية للنزاع في دارفور وما تلاه من إنشاء قوة لحفظ الأمن في الإقليم والحد من تدفق السلاح من دول الجوار. لقد أشار فريق التقييم كذلك إلى أن القضايا المتعلقة بالأراضي والمياه والمناخ والبيئة من العوامل الرئيسية التي تؤدي لنشوب النزاعات لتأثيرها على المجتمعات القبلية والرحل والرعاة والمزارعين والنازحين واللاجئين. صحيح أننا نشهد بين حين وآخر نشوب نزاعات قبلية وغيرها في مناطق معينة للعوامل المذكورة أعلاه، إلا أنها ليست بدوافع سياسية وبعضها بدوافع إجرامية، إلا أن الحالة الأمنية في إقليم دارفور تحسنت كثيرا لحد تم فيه إنهاء عمل بعثة يوناميد، وهناك تواجد لميليشيات عابرة للحدود بجانب الأثر السلبي للبعد الإقليمي وانعكاسه على أمن الإقليم. إن السلام لا يقاس بمؤشر مثالي يتطلب تحقيق درجة الصفر اللاعنفية، كما نفهم من توجهات بعض الدول، لأن ذلك مطلبا طوباويا لا يوجد على الأرض منذ هبوط آدم من الجنة. السيد الرئيسة، إن القرار 1591/2005 تجاوزته التطورات على الأرض، حيث توقفت الحرب تماما في دارفور. صحيح أن هناك تحديات سياسية وأمنية ظلت الحكومة الانتقالية تسلط عليها مجهودات كبيرة بهدف استتباب الأمن والسلام بالإقليم، وفي صدارتها اتفاقية جوبا للسلام بالتعاون مع شركاء العملية السلمية، وهذا هو رأس الرمح في استدامة السلام في الإقليم. وفي هذا السياق نطلب من المجتمع الدولي الوفاء بتعهداته تجاه دعم عملية السلام في دارفور. إن ديناميات السلام الذاتي تتفاعل بانعقاد العديد من مؤشرات الصلح بين القبائل في غرب وجنوب دارفور خلال الأشهر الماضية إثر الجهود التي رعاها السيد نائب رئيس مجلس السيادة الانتقالي، وقد حققت نجاحات مشهودة لجهة تعزيز وجود أجهزة الدولة وسيادة حكم القانون ومعالجة النزاعات بشأن الأراضي وعودة النازحين واللاجئين إلى قراهم، وشراء آليات لتفعيل الوضعية الأمنية من الموارد الذاتية الشحيحة. ولقد أقر تقرير الأمين العام المقدم إلى مجلس الأمن بشأن الحالة في السودان وأنشطة بعثة يونيتامس بالرقم S 2022/898 المؤرخ في أول ديسمبر 2022 بالأثر الإيجابي الكبير الذي نجم عن هذه المصالحات، مما أسهم في تعزيز الاستقرار والأمن في الإقليم. وفيما يتعلق بالمؤشرات الواردة في تقرير الأمين العام المذكور، يمكن ملاحظة التالي: إن أغلبها غير قابل للقياس والتنفيذ أو يخرج عن سياق دارفور ويتصل بالمستوى الوطني، مثل مؤشر الحوكمة السياسية الاقتصادية وتشكيل المجلس الأعلى لنزع السلاح والتسريح وإعادة الإدماج، والمطلوب اقتصارها على المفوضية الإقليمية فقط. هناك فقرات تطالب التعجيل بإنفاذ اتفاقية جوبا للسلام، ولا تشير إلى تقاعس المانحين وعدم الوفاء بالتزاماتهم في هذا الصدد. إن عقوبات دارفور بحاجة إلى إعادة تقييم بموجب الفقرة العاملة الأولى في القرار 26/20 الصادر في 2022، الذي يشتمل على إجراء التعديل والتعليق أو الإلغاء النهائي والكامل أو المتدرج، وأنه لا بد من إعادة تقييم للقرار 15/91 بناء على الوضعية القائمة حالياً ضمن سياق التطورات السياسية الإيجابية والسعي بخطى حثيثة لتشكيل حكومة مدنية جديدة. إن القرار مقتصر على الوضعية الأمنية في دارفور، وأن تكليف فريق الخبراء برصد التقدم يعني توسيع ولايته لتشمل المراقبة والرصد والإبلاغ عن تطورات الأوضاع السياسية والأمنية بالسودان. يواصل السودان جهوده الذاتية لتنفيذ الخطة الوطنية لحماية المدنيين، وتشمل إنشاء القوة المشتركة لحفظ الأمن وحماية المدنيين شراكة بين الحكومة والأطراف الموقعة على اتفاقية سلام دارفور، ولا تزال المساعي مستمرة في المحاور الأخرى. ختاماً، السيد الرئيسة، يؤكد السودان على دعمه لجهود الأمم المتحدة ومجلس الأمن والمجتمع الدولي لتحقيق السلام في دارفور، ويبدي استعداده لمواصلة التعاون البناء لتحقيق هذا الهدف، ويطلب السودان من مجلس الأمن الاستجابة إلى طلبه المتكرر بإنهاء تفويض فريق الخبراء المستقل بموجب القرار 15/91/2005 وإنهاء قرار العقوبات بحلول مارس 2023 لانتفاء مبررات استمرار فرضه. وشكرا سيد الرئيس.
I thank the representative of the Sudan for their statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned. The 9,211th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. The provisional agenda for this meeting is reports of the Secretary General on the Sudan and South Sudan. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of the Sudan to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Mr. Volker Perth, Special Representative of the Secretary General for Sudan and Head of the United Nations Integration Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of Item 2 of the agenda. I wish to draw the attention of Council members to document S/2022/898, the report of the Secretary General on the situation in the Sudan and the activities of the nation's integrated transition assistance mission in the Sudan. I now give the floor to Mr. Volker Perth.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Security Council. Let me thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. You may recall that Last time I briefed this council, I told you that we may have some good news when I come back in December. And for over a year now, positive news has been in short supply in Sudan. Since the military takeover of 25 October 2021, the country has found itself in a multidimensional political, economic, and security crisis. The dynamics of the past couple of weeks, however, inspire hopes that Sudan may find a way out of the crisis and embark on a more sustainable new transitional phase. Let me explain these dynamics. Last Monday, 5 December, the military leadership and a broad range of civilian actors signed up to a political framework agreement. It is supposed to lay the ground after a further round of talks on substance for a final political accord and the formation of a new civilian government leading the country towards recovery, democratic elections, and this over a 2-year transition phase. Let me commend the efforts by all Sudanese sides. Military and civilian stakeholders have come a long way. From the coup 1 year ago, the military's announcement last July to withdraw from politics, to these latest developments. On 24 October, the trilateral mechanism, that is the African Union, IGAD, and Yunitams, received a document from the military leadership with their comments and amendments to the draft constitutional document, which had earlier been prepared under the auspices of the Sudanese Bar Association Steering Committee. This represented a significant first breakthrough. Concurrently, civilian signatories to the draft have formed a coalition to engage collectively in talks with the military. This coalition and the military then agreed on a 2-phase political process to return to civilian-led transition. And the first phase has now been concluded with the signing of the political framework agreement. The second phase is about to begin, and the events of the last 2 days are actually the reason for me not being in New York today, but talking to you from Khartoum. Encouragingly, both civilian and military stakeholders have become more transparent about preliminary understandings and have increased their efforts to reach out to other actors and to the public. A final political agreement, once reached, will lead to a civilian government that should be in a better position to address the security, humanitarian, and economic situation, should pave the way towards building a democratic state based on human rights, rule of law, and gender equality, and provide a future for the young men and women of Sudan. It will also allow for a resumption of peace talks with movements that have yet to make peace with the government, and for the restoration of broad-based international support to Sudan. As we are approaching the end of this year, it's an opportune moment to reflect on the challenges of the past 13 months. The coup and the subsequent political impasse plunged the country into a state of uncertainty and insecurity. Tensions escalated into violence in areas that previously had experienced calm. Since the beginning of this year, more than 900 people were reportedly killed and many more injured in violent conflict. In the past months, significant clashes took place in the Blue Nile, in West Kordofan, and in Central Darfur. The resurgence of large-scale violence demonstrates the increasing fragility at the state level, exacerbated by the continued government vacuum. Local authorities simply lack the capacity and resources to protect civilians, while root causes and fundamental grievances have yet to be addressed. Since my last briefing to this Council on the Blue Nile in October, a state of emergency has been imposed in that region. While the levels of violence have subsided, the situation there remains precarious. Intercommunal violence also occurred in Lagawa locality, West Kordofan, in mid-October, leaving at least 19 killed and 65,000 displaced. In Central Darfur, the past 2 months have witnessed intense fighting between the Sudan Liberation Army and the leadership of Abdul Wahid al-Noor and the Rapid support forces. The latest episode of violence in Jebel Marra occurred in November and resulted in the deaths of 13 civilians and 5,600 displaced. SLA leader Abdul Wahid al-Noor confirmed to me during my recent visit to Juba that he would, quote, neither attack nor escalate, unquote. Let me urge all sides to at least commit to this principle. Across Sudan, more than 260,000 people have been displaced due to conflict since the beginning of the year. These are man-made, human-made catastrophes, often caused by disputes over access to resources and seemingly exacerbated by political manipulation in more than a few cases. And all this is compounding natural disasters and growing humanitarian needs. Humanitarian partners estimate that about 15.8 million people, that's a third of the population, will need humanitarian assistance in 2023. This is an increase of 1.5 million compared to 2022, the biggest in a decade. This year, in 2022, the number of flood-affected people surpassed that of last year and reached 349,000 across the country. High inflation continues to reduce households' purchasing power, with people unable to meet their basic needs. While the UN and partner organizations managed to reach 9.1 million people in need from January to September, the 2022 humanitarian response plan is only funded at 41.3%. The human rights situation remains concerning. Protests against military rule have continued and have largely remained peaceful. More often than not, security forces have acted, however, or reacted with excessive use of force. In the latest incident, on 24 November, 2 protesters were killed in Omdurman. This brought the total death toll among protesters, mainly in the capital, to 121 since the coup. Also, more than 8,000 have been injured. As I've stated repeatedly before this council, it is incumbent upon the authorities to respect the right to peaceful assembly and to refrain from excessive use of force, even when provoked. Equally important is to ensure proper due process for defendants facing trial. In this context, the visit of the new UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Türk, to Sudan last month, his first field visit since assuming his duties, is testament to the unwavering commitment of the United Nations to the upholding of human rights in Sudan. I thank the Sudanese authorities for facilitating Mr. Türk's visit. The meaningful participation of women and youth is a critical factor to the success of the political process and the transition. The Women's Rights Group, a diverse group of non-partisan women from the regions, continues to engage with all parties to ensure women's rights in any future agreement. They continue to call for women's meaningful participation in the process at a minimum of 40% across delegations. I'm encouraged that the Women's Rights Group has gained broader acceptance and that some women's demands were included in the framework agreement. In the past months, the trilateral mechanism has exerted substantial efforts to encourage Sudanese stakeholders to participate in the political process. This includes meetings with resistance committees and other civil society actors. In mid-November, the trilateral visited Kassala to listen to various stakeholders, their officials, civil society, women, youth, and tribal leaders from the east of Sudan, which arguably is Sudan's most marginalized and least represented region. Last week, the trilateral traveled to Juba to meet with SPLM North leader Al-Hilu and SLA leader Abdul Wahid al-Noor to inform them about the political process and hear their views. While the signing of the framework agreement is an important breakthrough, Critical, contentious issues still need to be addressed in the final agreement. These include security sector reform and the merger of forces, transitional justice, the implementation of the Juba Peace Agreement, the status of the Dismantling Committee, and the East. We would also deem it useful to have an exchange in this second phase about the economic and developmental priorities of a new government. Yunitams and the UN country team have already begun to coordinate with the international community on the ground here to ensure a package of support for a new transitional period. While progress on the political track is encouraging, it can still be derailed by challenges and spoilers. As Sudan gets closer to reaching a final political agreement, those who don't see their interest advanced by a political settlement may escalate attempts to undermine the process. A sufficiently inclusive process can help safeguard against their influence. Concerted advocacy from the international community is also needed to encourage constructive positions from those who are not or do not want to be part of the process or do not want to be part of the process yet. In closing, let me once again commend those Sudanese who have taken the courageous step of agreeing on and signing up to the political framework agreement 2 days ago. This has been a truly Sudanese-owned and Sudanese-led process. The framework agreement now offers a path to realize the aspirations of Sudan's youth, women, and men. However, working together as a UN with you, esteemed members of the Security Council and the larger international community, in support of these efforts, can help the Sudanese to go forward on the path they have chosen. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Perth for his brief.